Imagine a puzzle, the pieces scattered, the image unclear, and the final resolution elusive. This is the world of unsolved serial killings. In the annals of criminal history, few things are as chilling and captivating as unsolved serial killings. They are the dark mysteries that haunt the corridors of time, evoking a macabre fascination that straddles the line between horror and intrigue. Each case is a labyrinth of clues, a narrative knotted in enigma, and a testament to the grim reality that sometimes evil walks free. Unsolved serial killings are not just stories of life and death. They are also stories of our collective failure to deliver justice. They are the chilling reminders of the monsters who lurk among us, their identities shrouded in the shadows of uncertainty. They are the epitomes of our deepest fears, the embodiment of our nightmares, and the stark reminders of our vulnerability. These cases are intriguing because they challenge our sense of security and order. They defy the logical progression of crime and punishment. They leave us questioning, doubting, and theorizing. They compel us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even in our advanced age of forensics and technology, some killers still manage to elude capture. And it's this truth that draws us in. It's the unanswerable questions, the dangling threads of evidence, and the chillingly incomplete narratives that capture our imagination. We are, after all, creatures of curiosity, drawn to the unsolved, the unknown, the unexplored. In this video, we'll delve into 5 such mysteries. 5 chilling cases of unsolved serial killings that continue to puzzle investigators and captivate the public. We'll explore the evidence, dissect the theories, and immerse ourselves in the chilling narratives of these unsolved crimes. But remember, these are not tales spun from fiction. They are real stories, with real victims, and real monsters who have yet to be unmasked. As we journey into these cases, remember, each one remains a mystery, a story without an ending. Our journey into the abyss begins with the original Night Stalker, a case that has baffled investigators for decades. The original Night Stalker, also known as the East Area Rapist, is a name that sends chills down the spine of true crime enthusiasts. This mysterious figure is believed to have committed at least 12 murders, 50 sexual assaults, and over 100 burglaries in California from the mid-70s to the mid-80s. His victims ranged in age, gender, and socioeconomic status, but they all shared one terrifying experience: a predator in the night who struck with ruthless precision. The investigation into the crimes of the original Night Stalker was marked by frustration and dead ends. At the time, forensic science was still in its infancy, and many of the tools we now take for granted in crime solving were unavailable. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the stalker's identity remained elusive. He was careful, always wearing a mask and gloves, leaving behind few clues to his identity. One of the most chilling aspects of the original Night Stalker's crimes were the clues he did leave behind. These weren't your typical pieces of physical evidence like fingerprints or DNA. Instead, they were psychological clues, left to torment his victims and the investigators on his trail. He would often call his victims before and after the attacks, breathing heavily or threatening them. He was known to break into homes prior to his attacks, leaving doors and windows unlocked, setting the stage for his return. Despite the extensive and dedicated efforts by law enforcement, the original Night Stalker managed to evade capture. His crimes were so horrific and his methods so elusive that he became something of an enigma, a phantom that haunted the dreams of those who knew of his crimes. His reign of terror ended as abruptly as it began, with his last known attack in 1986. Many theories have been proposed over the years about the identity and fate of the original Night Stalker. Some believe he was a police officer or military man given his tactical precision and knowledge of law enforcement procedures. Others speculate he may have died or been incarcerated for unrelated crimes, explaining the sudden end to his crime spree. Despite advances in DNA technology and renewed efforts by law enforcement in recent years, the case remains unsolved. The original Night Stalker seems to have disappeared into the ether, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. Even now, decades later, the case of the original Night Stalker continues to intrigue and perplex. The mystery surrounding his identity and his fate serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the shadows of our everyday lives. Despite the horrific nature of his crimes, the original Night Stalker remains a phantom, his identity and fate unknown. Our next case takes us to Canada's Highway of Tears, a stretch of road that has become synonymous with loss and mystery. In the heartland of British Columbia, Canada, lies a lonely, desolate stretch of road known as the Highway of Tears. This roughly 700-kilometer route has become the backdrop for one of the most chilling unsolved serial killing sprees in history. From the late 1960s to the early 2000s, a series of horrifying murders occurred here, with the victims predominantly being indigenous women. The Highway of Tears murders have claimed the lives of at least 18 women, but some estimates suggest the number could be as high as 40, or even more. Each victim was either last seen, or their remains were discovered along this haunting stretch of highway. The age of the victims ranged from 12 to 33, and they all shared a similar fate, a tragic end to a life cut short too soon. Despite the efforts of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, the investigations into these murders have been fraught with challenges. The vast and remote nature of the terrain, coupled with the transient nature of some of the victims, made gathering evidence and clues a daunting task. Furthermore, the passage of time and the elements have washed away vital evidence, leaving investigators with little to work with. The RCMP launched Project E-Pana in 2005, a major investigative effort aimed at solving these cases. Despite their best efforts, the majority of the cases remain unsolved, and the identity of the killer or killers remains unknown. Theories about the perpetrator range from a single serial killer to multiple murderers, each operating independently of each other. Some speculate it could be a truck driver or someone else familiar with the highway, while others suggest it may be someone from the local communities. This case has also brought to light the larger issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada, a crisis that extends far beyond the confines of the Highway of Tears. The lack of resolution and justice for these victims and their families has led to criticism of the police and government, with accusations of systemic racism and indifference. Yet, amid the sorrow and frustration, there is a glimmer of hope. In 2012, the RCMP announced that they had a suspect for one of the murders. DNA evidence linked U.S. felon Bobby Jack Fowler to the 1974 murder of 15-year-old Colleen McMillan. Fowler, who died in prison in 2006, was known to be a violent man with a history of crimes against women. However, his connection to the rest of the murders remains a subject of speculation. The Highway of Tears is a story of profound loss, of lives taken too soon, and of a community forever scarred by these tragedies. It is a chilling reminder of the many unsolved crimes that haunt our world, of the unknown that lurks in the shadows, and of the justice that remains elusive for so many. Yet it is also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, of the families who continue to seek answers, and of the investigators who refuse to give up. The Highway of Tears continues to echo with the cries of its victims, a silent plea for justice that reverberates along its lonely route. And as long as the crimes remain unsolved, the highway will continue to hold its grim moniker, a haunting testament to the lives lost and the mystery that remains. The Highway of Tears remains a haunting testament to these unsolved crimes, a chilling reminder of the unknown. We now turn our attention to Italy, and the enigmatic figure known as the Monster of Florence. In the rolling hills and peaceful vineyards of Tuscany, a menace lurked in the shadows during the late 1960s to the mid-1980s. This menace was given a name, Il Mostro di Firenze, or the Monster of Florence. The monster's reign of terror involved 16 lives brutally ended, their bodies left as macabre displays in the lovers' lanes of Florence. The victims were always couples, typically young, and often parked in secluded areas around the city. The monster seemed to have a particular method. The male victims were usually killed outright, while the female victims were often subjected to a horrific post-mortem mutilation, a signature that chilled the city to its core and left investigators puzzled. Despite the gruesome nature of these crimes, the monster was careful, leaving behind few clues. The primary evidence was the same .22 caliber Beretta gun used in every murder, but the weapon itself was never found. The other key piece of evidence was a peculiar notch carved into the shell casings, suggesting the use of a modified gun. The Italian authorities were relentless in their pursuit of the monster. Over the years they arrested and tried numerous suspects, but none of the charges stuck. Some were acquitted due to lack of evidence, others had their convictions overturned on appeal, and a few were even released after serving time, their guilt deemed uncertain. The Monster of Florence case was not just a criminal investigation, it became a cultural phenomenon. The public's fascination with the crimes led to countless books, films, and conspiracy theories, some involving satanic cults and high-ranking officials. However, despite the intense scrutiny and speculation, the monster's identity remains unknown. Several reasons contribute to why this case remains unsolved. First, the investigation was marred by controversy and alleged corruption. There were accusations of evidence tampering and claims of a cover-up that reached the highest levels of Italian society. This muddied the waters and cast doubt on the entire investigation. Second, the monster's modus operandi was uncommon. The targeting of couples, the signature mutilation, and the use of the same gun throughout the years were all unique aspects that made profiling the killer difficult. Lastly, the passage of time has been a hindrance. With over 40 years since the last crime attributed to the monster, many of the original investigators have retired or passed away. Evidence has degraded, and memories have faded. The Monster of Florence's identity remains shrouded in mystery. Despite the best efforts of investigators, the monster has evaded justice, leaving behind a trail of victims and a city forever marked by fear and speculation. The Monster of Florence remains an enigma, a specter of terror that haunted a city and remains at large. Let's journey back to the United States, to the scenic yet chilling Colonial Parkway. Our tale begins in the late 80s, along a 23-mile stretch of scenic road in Virginia known as the Colonial Parkway. Amidst the tranquility of this picturesque route, a dark secret was unfolding. This would become the hunting ground of the infamous unidentified serial killer, known only as the Colonial Parkway Killer. The killer's reign of terror spanned 4 years, from 1986 to 1990. In that time, the Colonial Parkway Killer claimed the lives of 8 innocent victims. The victims were all young, ranging in age from 14 to 27, and were typically attacked in pairs. The first victims, Kathy Thomas and Rebecca Dowski, were found in October of 1986. Their bodies were discovered inside Thomas's car, which had been pushed down an embankment off the Colonial Parkway. The following year, David Nobling and Robin Edwards were found. Our final case brings us to a small town in Texas, where the Phantom Killer left a trail of fear and death. In the spring of 1946, this quiet Texas town was terrorized by an unseen menace, a faceless phantom who struck at night, leaving a wake of unsolved murders. The Phantom Killer, as he came to be known, was responsible for 5 brutal attacks resulting in 10 victims, 5 of whom did not survive. Each victim was a young couple, caught unawares in lovers' lanes and secluded spots. The Phantom's method was chillingly consistent. He would approach his unsuspecting victims under the cover of darkness, shining a bright light into their eyes to disorient them before launching his assault. The ensuing investigation was one of the largest in Texas history, involving state and local law enforcement, as well as the Texas Rangers. Despite their best efforts, the clues were scarce. The Phantom was careful, leaving behind little physical evidence. He seemed to vanish into thin air after each attack, leaving only fear and speculation in his wake. A set of bloody footprints, a flashlight found at one crime scene, and a peculiar caliber of bullets were among the few tangible pieces of evidence investigators had to work with. The killer's modus operandi, his choice of victims and locations, and the absence of a clear motive added layers of complexity to an already baffling case. Over the years, many theories have been proposed, suspects questioned, and leads pursued, but the identity of the Phantom Killer remains elusive. The case was officially closed in 1950, but it has been reopened several times in light of new evidence or advancements in forensic science. However, no conclusive evidence has ever been found to unmask the phantom who brought terror to this small Texas town. The Phantom Killer's identity remains a mystery, the final chapter of his terrifying tale unwritten. These cases, chilling and unsolved, remind us of the mysteries that lurk in the shadows. They are a stark reminder of the human capacity for evil, but also of our relentless pursuit for justice. Let's take a moment to look back at the 5 haunting tales we've delved into, each one a chilling testament to the unending mystery of unsolved serial killings. We started with the original Night Stalker, an unidentified individual whose reign of terror spanned from the late 70s to the mid-80s. Despite advanced DNA testing and countless leads, the identity and whereabouts of this ruthless predator remain unknown. Then, we journeyed to the Highway of Tears, a stretch of Canadian road that has been the final destination for too many lost souls. Despite the tireless efforts of local law enforcement and the families of the victims, the cases remain as cold as the Canadian winters. We moved on to Italy, to the chilling tale of the Monster of Florence. Despite the arrest of numerous suspects over the years, none have been definitively linked to all the crimes, leaving a trail of questions and a city in fear. Next, we took a drive down the Colonial Parkway in the United States, where a series of unsolved murders in the 80s still haunt the area. Theories abound, but the identity of the Colonial Parkway killer remains shrouded in mystery. And finally, we revisited the haunting tale of the Phantom Killer, whose reign of terror in the 40s left a small Texan town forever scarred. Despite extensive investigations, the Phantom has never been unmasked. These unsolved crimes are a testament to the ongoing efforts of law enforcement and dedicated amateurs alike. They are a beacon of hope in the pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. As we step away from these unsolved serial killings, we are reminded that sometimes the most terrifying stories are those without an ending.